Chris, before I start the interview, in India, power cuts are real. So I might go off if there is a power cut. So let me start. Chris McKay, Arati Kadav, welcome to Storytellers Are Us. Chris, first of all, congratulations on the Tomorrow War. I watched the film last night. I loved it. When Amazon gave us this opportunity to speak with you, I couldn't help but pull Arati in. Arati's first feature, which is a sci-fi film, world premiered at our festival, and we are very, very passionate about, getting creators from the West to meet our creators from India. And Arati is a big admirer of your work, and we really wanted to make this conversation happen. I know that the shooting for Tomorrow War got over in January 2020, but you had to take on post-production because nobody knew the pandemic is coming. And unfortunately, we are now in a genre film. We are living it as a reality.
Yeah, we're living in it.
Did you feel that you needed to change anything in the narrative of the film, and how challenging was post-production on the movie because you did it during the pandemic?
Yeah, we didn't change. It's a good question. Let me start with there was challenges, of course, because suddenly you have to spread everybody out. Everyone has to work from home. Post-production, you are sort of, siloed in rooms in general, but you are collaborating. You are going into, whether it's a screening of an edit or a visual effects review where you've got several people and you're working with the team. It made it different. I think honestly, the hardest thing is just the personal, emotional stuff that everyone was going through. I think that, if work is work, and you kind of like, you get through stuff like that and you figure it out, and technology really helps us. But I honestly think that it was the emotional stuff of people, especially people with kids, who were going through something that they, just what we're all going through, something that we can think about the future a little bit, and we can plan for the future, and we understand, 4 months down the road, what our goals are, and we have a general sense, people have highs and lows and ups and downs, but like we have a general sense of what's going to happen. I think even still to this day, we still don't know 4 months from now what's going to happen, and the human toll and the tragedy and stuff like that. So I think a lot of that was what was on everyone's mind, and trying to be really mindful of that when you're also trying to, make a movie and working long hours and stuff like that. I think it actually made people enjoy working from home because they could be next to their families and they could be with their, the significant people in their lives, and not in LA, not having to commute. Maybe back and forth is kind of nice to have to travel back and forth. So that made it nice. Did we change? The funny thing is, there were things that we changed because the movie was very inadvertently, because obviously we didn't know the COVID was coming. There were things I think that were too close to the COVID thing with protesters and with other stuff like that I think that we pulled back from. Because I shot more footage of protesters. There was like more stuff like that about how society was getting torn apart a little bit by, people having, opposing views to, sending people to the future and all that stuff. And I think that the studio suddenly got really nervous about that and about the parallels, and wanted to pull back from that because they just felt like it was a little bit too close to home, and a little bit maybe bringing too much of the real world into a movie that's meant to be, a sci-fi fantasy world. I like that it has there's parallels, and there's things that are adjacent and touching, but that's me, filmmaker, wanting to sort of interact with things that are on people's minds. But I think from the studio's standpoint, they were just like, let's have a little less protest footage. Let's have a little less talking heads arguing with each other and things like that in the news montage and that sort of thing. So anyway, long answer to your question, but that's some of the stuff that was going through our minds.
But Chris, actually, you're right, because the movie really lands because of that. You said in an interview that when you got the script of the film, there was not a lot of humor in it. And actually, to tell you the truth, I really enjoyed the humor in it because I got into the film with Sam Richardson, a guy that's probably me right now, babbling because I'm nervous. And then on the stairs, that amazing reveal that you did, When he's there and he says shit, 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 I was like, okay, I'm right there. That's me. So how did you bring in the elements of, it's wonderful to see that in your films, that you bring in humor and relatability and human drama. How do you balance that with the kind of thrills that you're creating?
The script was very, and I love Children of Men. I think Children of Men's a brilliant movie. It's not to take away anything from Children of Men, but there are movies like Children of Men that are very serious movies and very well told stories. And then there are movies like Independence Day or, Children of Men is very close to, it's not aliens, it's not time travel, you know what I mean? Like, but it is about, a kind of, dystopian future, and our movie sort of touched on things like that. And I think our movie was the script was a little more serious. And I think when you're doing things in a genre movie, you have to have balance. You have to have tonal shifts. You have to have ups and downs. I think many movies moves way far away from emotional stuff and comedy and things like that, or just sort of bring in comedy like kind of from the outside to just sort of make jokes and that kind of thing, but don't have it. You're talking about the stuff with Sam and how I wanted stuff that was situational based humor, character based humor, things like that came out of the characters interacting with what running into the conflict of the movie. And so finding humor in that, gallows humor, self-effacing humor, things like that, and not sort of like bringing in wacky thing from the sidelines that comes in and tells jokes or whatever, or human drama that feels like it's not germane to your theme or to the situation at hand. Like I think sometimes people go, okay, here's the moment where we need to have something that's sad, or here's the moment where we need to have something that's, and I think that what at least what the script presented and what we tried to honor is that the human drama came out of the situation they were in. And that's why when I pitched the movie to the studio, I sort of likened it a little bit to It's a Wonderful Life, because it is sort of this construct that the movie presents is thematically tied to what the characters are going through and what the ultimate goals of the theme of the movie are. So I wanted it to kind of be all of a piece as much as humanly possible. And movies like this generally are just like a story, all external stuff, and then kind of just sort of nods to the internal stuff. And I wanted it to be both and the script was, represented that. We just had to tighten some connection. There's some stuff in the beginning of the movie that didn't really pay off in the end of the movie, and I wanted it to pay off, and I like movies where it's not just one lone hero that comes in to try to save the day. I think that the world, my view of the world is that it takes a village, that it's we work together. We solve our problems when we work best when we're working together. And that to me is what I wanted Chris to kind of, Chris's character Dan to go through and realize, maybe he needs some of these people in his life that he, had previously, sort of dismissed, or he knew that he wanted to do something great with his life. And then through this, through the circumstances of the alien invasion of the future, he's able to achieve that, but at having to make some changes in the way he sort of looked at his world prior to the event. So anyway, that's, so balancing that stuff, it's tricky. And, obviously, as it's hard to do, but when you do it, I think it's the best version of these kinds of movies. And is what I always hoped and dreamed movies like this could be like when I was a kid.
The way you have the concept of poetics, the West, in Indians, we have a concept of rasa, which is sort of an emotional essence. So the emotions like joy, love, everything has to be together for a film to work. And I feel that, not just your film, but even your scene has so many of these packed, and I just love it. Speaking about the reveal scene, the alien reveal scene, that I thought was like fantastic. First of all, I saw that it came at some 50-minute mark, and we really build up to it. We're like waiting for the alien, and so now you have to get it right. And that scene in the staircase, it had that like terror. Like I was petrified. I was watching in the screen, and I was like, oh my gosh. And when you're revealing the alien, and first you reveal the gaze of the alien, so that was fantastic. And then you have Chris looking at it, that man looking at it. Plus, then there's this one man going bonkers, like shoo, 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 shoo. So how do you plan that?
Well, so I started in animation, and everything that you do in animation is about pre-visualizing for the next step, right? So you start with storyboards and you build an animatic, and that's just a precursor to then going into layout. And in layout, you start doing basic blocking with the camera and with sort of the rudimentary versions of your characters before you get into animation. You know what I mean? So you're sort of like, you get a chance, you're testing, I always think that animation is a great way for any film. Like, I think every filmmaker should have to go through, you make a short film in animation or something, because it is storytelling in slow motion. And you really do end up like slowing everything down and looking at, and it's very expensive. So you have to be very picky and choosy about what you're going to put in a scene, and then start to layer in your character, your plot stuff. You start to really sort of understand how much you can pack into a scene and get, multiple things across. And so was great training to be able to do something like this. I mean, obviously, because, we don't have, on set, we don't have the white spikes. We either have like a stunt guy like holding something or a broom or a thing, whatever it is, but or it's just the actors just, kind of being playful and kind of, going back to childhood cops and robbers thing, where you're sort of, have an imaginary thing that you're shooting at and running around and stuff like that, using your imaginative, process. But we did a little bit previs. Then we built a set that didn't look anything like the previs at all. So then we had to figure out how to use that set and come up with stuff that we liked from the previs and adapt it. And then a lot of it was also kind of improvising with the camera team and coming up with sort of a way to shoot it. And unfortunately, that was a set that we built. There's a stitch in that scene when they're running down the hallway. In the hallway, you're following a character. You're following Dan and the characters heading towards a doorway, and that's in a real building. And then if you watch that moment, there's a character that crosses in front of the camera, and then that actually is a stitch that we did, so that now we built the same doorway on a set in our stage. And so we had somebody cross the camera, and then we lined up everybody so that it matched. And so then they seamlessly blended that, and then they open the door and they go in. So it's actually like, it's weird. It's like it's a very subtle visual effect that we do in the movie, but it is a way for us to sort of just make that location feel seamless. And then the music is going crazy, crazy, crazy as they're heading towards the door, and then everything stops, and we pull out the sound, and we just do really naturalistic sound. It was fun playing with the sound team on that, because so much of that about building the suspense is the sound, and now no more music. It's sort of like you're taking everything out and you're just hearing Chris breathe. And you're hearing all the other actors breathe as we're pulling them down the staircase. And I just wanted everything to slow down for a second, sort of feel the room, feel the tension of like they're going down the staircase, they don't know what they're getting into, and then they hear the noises up above, and just that kind of misdirect. I'm a Brian De Palma Hitchcock fan, so like those are movies that John Carpenter and people like that, Steven Spielberg. So those are the movies like I studied and
wow.
That I love. Yeah.
Nice. So first of all, I have to say that to have an alien and time travel in the same film is a feat in itself. It's probably the top 10 things any human being can do, like make a film with alien and time travel. So if I were you, I would have just started with it. Like, it's such a cool thing to do. I'm a filmmaker myself, and I do, put a lot of stress on the visual vocabulary of a film. So when you have to design an alien, or when you have to design the mechanism of time travel, it needs to be unique, especially for you people in America. We have a tradition of alien films, right, from Alien to Arrival. So you have to make your aliens fit a certain paradigm, and yet you have to be unique. And I loved the design of the alien. It was nothing fancy. It was just pure good design. Like, it was textures, and they looked ancient, and there was so much to it. Plus, the mechanism of time travel. Like, it was like, no fancy gadgetry. Don't walk in here, walk out from there. You literally made your actors jump through time. So first of all, how do you get that across to the studio? Like, okay, I'm just going to make my actors jump through time, and then how did you plan it or design it?
Chris, I also want to interrupt and add to that, saying that, we were food. They didn't want anything from us. I loved how simple their desire was. They're just hungry.
They're food.
Yes.
Very, very
Nothing else to offer.
Even the most complicated mechanism of time travel is like, time is a river and you're just jumping. It's so simply explained, like nothing massive blackboard with like 10 equations, fake equations to explain time travel. It just, so poetic and so graceful. Like, I just loved it. Yeah.
A lot of movies like this these days are made on like a green screen stage, and you're building a lot of stuff later and that kind of thing. And I said that one way of I think if we're gonna have a very vulnerable, relatable hero in Chris and an emotional backstory and things like that, the more that we shoot things practically, when we make things practical, and that we can only see things that Chris would experience, that we only see the movie through Chris's point of view. So you don't cut to the Pentagon, you don't cut to a science lab with people doing stuff. You only see and experience what Chris would see and understand. So the mechanics of how some of a time travel machine is somewhere behind the scenes. And yes, you see some of the things light up and do stuff, but you don't see like people pulling levers, people doing stuff, things like that you would maybe see in another movie. You're just trying to see the basics, or kind of just in general what Chris, could see and experience, with a little sort of some slight exceptions. But to me, that was what it was important, is that if I felt like it was grounded through the eyes of Chris's character, or Sam or Yvonne, like if you saw it through their eyes and experienced it that way, you might relate to it more, and then it would seem a little less fantastic and more like it was just kind of like, okay, this is we're going to the time travel. It's the next thing. It's common, it's like the next thing. And I love this in the script. I love this simple explanation of the two rafts in a river and that kind of thing. It's because I just think, so especially since the movie isn't about like a lot of movies, whether it's Back to the Future or Avengers Endgame or something like that, it's about like undoing the time. It's like you got to use time travel in order to undo something and that sort of thing. Well, we didn't have that kind of story, so you didn't necessarily need to understand everything. And I think kind of like letting some of that stuff go, so that you can it's about like this guy and survival and family and second chances and stuff like that. Like, to me, that was more important, foregrounding that, and then since the script was very simple, letting the mechanics that be simple. I wanted it to be like colorful and beautiful and kind of like eye-catching and that sort of thing. And like you were saying about the aliens, that they're just hungry. Like, that was one of the notes that I had to the team, was just, I want something that feels ancient. I want it to feel old. I want its skin to have a history of nicks and cuts and abrasions and fungus, or all sorts of things growing on it, but I wanted them to feel hungry. I just wanted their bellies to be sucked in, and their bodies to be I just wanted them to feel hungry and ancient, and then I wanted them to have a kind of feral intelligence that you may not know, we may not know, the audience may not know what they're saying to each other, but they do have a way of communicating, that they do work as a team, that they work in packs, that they coordinate to attack their prey, stuff like that. I wanted you to at least understand that they had some rudimentary kind of fair, like the way coyotes or wolves. I live in Los Angeles, and I go hiking in the morning and by Griffith Park, and you see coyotes all the time, and you see them travel in packs, and you see them, and you can hear them communicating with each other over distances. And so that's that to me was kind of what I wanted to put into the White Spikes.
Yeah. I'm also like massive fan of your animation films, like, and also within animation genre, your Lego films really stand out because the actors are literally jumping all over. Actors in animation films, even though you have artists and stuff, are stemming from your subconscious. But when you're actually doing a live action, they are real people, like, outside. Did you feel it was different from going from here to there? And was there something that helped you and something that you felt could was an obstacle in general? Like,
yeah, like, it's a good question, because like there are definite differences, obviously. I've always tried to treat when we're in a voiceover session with actors, I've tried to sort of sometimes I like recording with multiple actors, because I like actors playing off, so whether it was, in the Lego movie, whether it was Chris Pratt and Elizabeth Banks and, together, or whether it was, Will Arnett and Zach Galifianakis and Lego Batman, putting multiple actors together, working off of each other, just allows for a little more kind of like spontaneous stuff. And I also, sometimes I'll bring a boom mic or I'll lav the actors up so they can walk around the room, so they don't need to be in front of a music stand with the microphone and kind of stand there, that they can walk around and interact with each other. So I've always sort of tried to bring a little bit of that into animation to get a kind of live action performance, to get a kind of spontaneity, organic stuff, especially with comedy and that kind of thing, where you can kind of like let people play off of each other. And I think when I was on set, a lot of times, especially when you're dealing with the white spikes, you are kind of going back to that same kind of thing, because when you're working with someone in a voiceover booth, because you are working with their imagination, so even though it is Chris Pratt on the street with a gun and it's real, we got, muzzle flash and, bullets flying and smoke and explosions and everything else, he is sort of still like looking at something down there that he doesn't really see. And you are still trying to lay out the thing and work with, okay, well, the white spike's going to be over there and it's going to run that way. Or just when you're running, shoot in that direction, there's, pretend there's white spikes going over here, duck under a spike that's going to come back up. Like you still are kind of working with them like you're working in animation, because you're sort of engaging them in their imaginative, space. So it was in some ways very similar. I mean, obviously there's like emotional stuff and blocking things, and you're sort of, you've got cameras, we're on practical sets. They're sometimes very difficult. We shot, we shot in a power plant for the deep swell, for the oil rig. So we're in a very hot, it was a working power plant. So it's very hot. It's, it's like you're in the middle of Georgia. It's a hot day outside. The power plant is working and it's steam going everywhere. You are kind of, it's different because obviously you don't have all those things. But I think that also helps inform the actors' performances too, because you've got real stuff that's happening around them. And yeah, so so that I think that informs the performance a little bit. And then it's just, at the end of the day, you are just working with everybody, your cast, your crews, imaginations, and you're trying to engage them in something that, they don't see the same thing that you see. You know what I mean? When you're directing something, they don't know how you're going to cut this thing together. They don't know what how you're going to evolve as a human being, as a filmmaker throughout your process, because obviously you make something and the person that started making that thing changes. You become a different person by the end of it. So you're going to hope, some of your ideas are going to stick, and some of those things are going to evolve as you start to interact with people that hopefully are, engaged in a process, and that you're all rowing in the same direction. You're always kind of retelling the story to your crew, to your cast, just to get them, to remind them of where you're at in the movie, to remind them where their characters are at, to remind them of the tone of the scene, of the tone of the movie, where we're at in the movie, that as the tone evolves and that kind of thing. So you are kind of doing all that same sort of stuff. It's just you're just sweating. It's the only difference.
I think we're running out of time. So before I ask my last question, I do want to ask you about that cool tattoo that you have. I've seen it in a bunch of interviews. What's that?
Well, I've got Alfred Hitchcock over here. This is my dog's paw. My dog that passed away. That's his paw. So I got his paw there. I got Catwoman here. Got Captain America.
We love Cap.
Halloween. This is sort of a Halloween tattoo there. Halloween 3. Yeah, I mean, I've got all sorts of. They all have little stories, little things that are meaningful to me. Yeah.
So before we wrap up, before we let you go, Chris, both of us wanted to know: have you plugged into Indian cinema at all?
Oh yeah. Funny thing is, the next movie I'm going to do is not as great as any of the Bollywood films. It's funny because it is tonally. It's an action movie. It's a horror movie. It's a comedy, and there's also a musical number in the middle of it. At least one. A musical number. So it is very much like you were saying, like there's a full experience that you're getting in the movie, you're all of this stuff, the inventiveness and joy that I see in movies in India, especially like the kind of the Bollywood musicals and that kind of thing. That to me is like such a breath of fresh air and so beautiful and expressive. And there's a little piece of that in this next movie I'm doing. So yeah.
Chris, thank you so much for talking to us, for making time. Best of luck for the Tomorrow War. And I just want to let you know that I wish that we were doing this in person. But whenever things are safe and travel can happen, forget about time travel. If we can go back to normal travel,
Yes.
we would love for you to come to the Mumbai Film Festival and meet the legions of fans that you have here. So,
I love that'd be beautiful. Yeah, I'd love to. That'd be amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank
It's great.
you.
Thanks for staying up
Yes.
late and doing this.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Of course. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Subscribe to MAMI Mumbai Film Festival and hit the bell icon to keep yourself updated on conversations on Storytellers Are Us, the origin story.